All right, good to have you with us here on Today on ENCA. I'm Gareth Edwards. We will get to that sport in just a moment. Let's just take a look at another angle of the recent flooding in KZN, not only affecting, of course, the province's economy and infrastructure. You can only imagine the impact it's had on the victims and the victims' families. Many of them still looking for answers, and while they're doing that, they're still digging through the dirt looking for their loved ones in some cases. Now, these people have witnessed people dying right in front of them, of course, going to be remembered for years to come. So from the psychological perspective, how do we begin to handle something like this? Let's now speak to Chantelle Booysen from the South African Depression and Anxiety Group. Chantelle, hello to you. And this is unprecedented. This is something that the ordinary human being would not experience in their life. Where do you begin to help someone who has lost a loved one in the fashion that they have?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. The situation in KZN is undeniably dire, and people in our communities have seen their lives and livelihoods just washed away by these floods and through persistent rain for many days. And as you've stated and shown, that there is severe infrastructure, logistical support, water supplies, healthcare services that's been disrupted. The thing is that, with natural disasters, it has the potential to produce high levels of stress, anxiety and anger. And this province in particular has had an onslaught of challenges that our communities have been facing even before the floods, like COVID-19, last year's riots and looting, fuel price increases and resulting unemployment rates and more. So people really are mentally and physically drained and exhausted as they are having to rebuild again and again and again. So yes, this environmental disaster combined with socio-political and socio-economic turmoils has a major impact on people's mental well-being.
I suppose it's
increases in stress and income.
Chantelle, I also believe it would be, well, I would imagine, I don't believe, I'm not a trained expert, I would imagine as well that even those who haven't been directly affected through the loss of a family member or even the loss of a home, I see that you're coming to us from Durban. Perhaps you can just tell me what it's been like as a resident of Durban to wake up to a tragedy that has had nothing to do with you. This is completely natural. And even for someone not losing a family member, the anxiety, I know it's raining in that province as well this weekend, the anxiety levels for the province must be through the roof.
Absolutely. And it's important to acknowledge that this environmental disaster is considered to be a traumatic event. So unlike other traumatic events, environmental disasters can result in tremendous destruction of property and even financial loss. So that further contributes to people's stress levels and disrupts people's normal coping efforts. So I think following this disaster, people will feel shunned or stunned. They'll be disorientated or unable to integrate all of this distressing information they're receiving. So whether you are directly impacted by it or you're seeing it on the news all the time or you know of people, it will absolutely affect you. And there will be a variety of experiences and thoughts and behaviors that will accumulate from here.
I'm going to ask you and I to imagine a moment where we can transport ourselves, you and I, Chantelle, into the home of one of these informal settlements where someone has watched their daughter being pulled out of their arms while they're trying to hang onto a tree to save their lives. They're not going to have access necessarily right away to trauma counselors, counseling experts. Someone who may be watching could come across someone who's experienced this but isn't trained. How do you begin to console? How do you begin to listen? How do you begin to try and just help this person?
Absolutely. I think, it is going to be a process where once people's immediate needs are served and once they are feeling a level of safety and they've got food and security and some level of security, that is when we will really see the psychological and emotional turmoil really unfold. I think if there is a three-stage kind of what we call the 3 L's of mental health first aid. So if you were just anyone looking out for someone, we call it look, listen and link. And it's really to look out for those who are in dire straits and who are, and offer some sort of support. Sometimes just a consensual hug, or just being there and listening to somebody non-judgmentally is already, it means a lot for somebody who is going through so much. And then also, if you are aware of any kind of link to a mental health professional, any resource like this at a call center, that is certainly something that you can facilitate. I think that the concern now, this immediate concern, is that the immediate needs to be served right now, especially since we have infrastructure disasters, and that they aren't that some of the cell phone towers have been disrupted, so there aren't connections to phone lines and electricity and power. So I think for the immediate need is to secure their safety and their food safety and their physical safety.
I'm going to leave this as a last question to you, Chantelle. We obviously got to bear in mind as well that at least when it comes to adults, we may have the mental acuity to understand what is going on. Processing could be a bit easier for us to understand because we understand what natural disasters are. I've seen far too many small children, especially in the informal settlements, witnessing something that they would never, ever ordinarily have to do. How does a parent try and explain what is going on, something out of their hands, to a young child who is obviously anxious, they're scared? What advice would you give parents who aren't sure how to explain what is going on to young children?
Of course. I think that the biggest thing is to be able to speak about it and to express that to somebody that you care for, and also to enable an environment where you can speak about these things. I think our local communities have we've got a culture of being able to speak about things, but I think we need to be able to speak about things that are troubling us inside. And I think if it is the kind of thing that we all are facing, we should be able to express some of those stresses, because that already alleviates a lot of pressure that you're feeling inside. So knowing how to communicate your experience, giving yourself time to adjust, asking for support, and to, like I mentioned, to listen empathetically. And then obviously also they're trying to find local support groups that have trained, experienced professionals, and sometimes just people in the same situation can also help a lot in that process.